I think he is the most unique guitar player, and the most, probably the most devoted. I mean, from what I know of Jeff, you know, he's either fixing his cars or playing the guitar. There's no in-between for him. And he actually is never changed. I mean, unlike myself, who's been kind of wandering around a lot of the time, dabbling in this and that and being led astray, Jeff has been very consistent, you know.
You'd sort of listen to Jeff along the way and you'd go, wow, he's getting really, really good, Jeff, you know. And you'd hear him a few years later and he'd just keep getting better and better and better. And he still has all the way through. And you know, he leaves us mere mortals, believe me, you know, just wondering and having so much respect for him. Because Jeff's whole guitar style has, it's just totally unorthodox to the way that anyone was taught. And he's just really developed a whole style that, of expanding the electric guitar and making it into something which was just sounds and techniques totally unheard of before. And that's just an amazing feat, believe me.
Well, you know, I mean, you know, the thing about Jeff was like, I'd done a bunch of shows with him in Europe, festivals. We did these bills with him, and his show was always amazing. You know, he was, to me, he was the greatest rock guitar player of all time, because he just, for 6 decades, he would reinvent himself every decade and come up with something that I go, oh man, I wish I thought of that. I wish I thought of that. He was just so creative and so influential. I mean, like when Gilmour says Beck is his favorite, you know, like everybody, Beck's at the top of everybody's list. It's either Eddie or Jeff. And sadly, they're both gone. You know, I mean, it's crazy, this world now. But I will say this about Jeff Beck: the most entertaining and the most incredible guitar player I've ever heard was when Jeff was just sitting in his dressing room. He had a little guitar amp and he had his guitar, and he was just playing to kill time before the show. And you just hear everything from Cliff Gallup to these insane phrases and melodies, and you're like, guy's not human. He's not human. And it would just be improv. And he would call me in every once in a while and like, hey, check this thing out. And he'd hand me his guitar. I'm like, and it played high action and it was set up for him. And you just go, this guy he lives in rarefied air, talent wise, that not a lot of people will experience, you know, in their life.
Jeff was completely and utterly unique, and a kind of musician who is impossible to define. And I was absolutely in awe of him. And you know, he's only a couple of years older than me and came from the same area where I came from, but he was a hero to me all along. Doing things which I kind of dreamed of doing when I was at school even. He was already up there in the Tridents and then in the Yardbirds, doing extraordinary things, and a major, major inspiration for me to try and do the same. Not the same, but to give myself a voice the way he had.
Do you have a favorite guitar player?
I have lots of favorite guitar players.
So many people will say David Gilmour is the best. He plays with emotion. I've talked to so many of your fans. So if you had to pick out one that stands out right now.
I probably the person who I've admired the longest and the most consistently is Jeff Beck in the guitar playing stakes. And a lovely guy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I have a story about the time I was relaxed the way you just explained it. I was at a restaurant one night, and I was at Craig's, not to brag, I was at Craig's, And
you got into Craig's?
I got into Craig's.
I keep trying.
I got
It's
into
like
Craig's.
you on this podcast. It just couldn't. They were like, absolutely not. But anyway, go ahead.
And Jeff Beck was in the room.
Oh, Jesus.
And I
yeah.
was relaxed. It's so funny to hear you say that. I went, oh, I don't have to think about how I play the guitar because the best is in the room.
So-
and it's not me.
I mean, my mother had gone out with a guy who was a pot smoker and was really into Jeff Beck's Blow by Blow and Wired albums, which were very popular around that time, around 1976, 77. And so she bought both of those albums for me as a present, and those were very exciting albums to me. And then I discovered the album Truth, which was made sort of concurrently with Jimi Hendrix's early stuff, and it was an album that Jimi Hendrix was a big fan of. His playing was nothing like it is on Blow by Blow and Wired, which are both fantastic, but he's pulling all these sounds out of the guitar that, again, I didn't know where these sounds were coming from. He's doing it mostly on a Les Paul, and there's no whammy bar or anything. He uses the whammy bar quite a bit on Blow by Blow and Wired, but on Truth there was no whammy bar, and yet you're always hearing him doing these tricks and making these sounds that I just, hearing the sounds that had come out of my guitar, I just didn't understand where these sounds were coming from, and it's one of those things, again, that I gradually started to understand.
Like I said last night, tonight is about Jeff Beck, the guy. And tonight I get to play with Johnny, Annika, Rhonda, Robert, and we get to play a song that was an oddball song for ZZ Top. But I got a phone call from Jeff, and he said, hey man, I need to talk to you. I'm really feeling kind of down. I said, well, I'm in the studio, we're gonna wrap up a number. I said, I'll call you back. And that night we finished a song called Rough Boy. So I sent it to Jeff, and he said, man, he said, I'll tell you what, he said, I was feeling down. He said, but hearing that song, he said, I said, well, wait a minute, it's kind of blue. He said, that's all right, now I'm feeling new.